Freshlist.io.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of You Deserve Fresh Lettuce. I am your co-host, Rachel.
And I'm Delia.
And don't forget to follow us on social media at YDFL Podcast. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, remember that you can ask Alexa to play the You Deserve Fresh
she's
Lettuce
listening anyway. She's so
podcast for you. And you can also check us out on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share,
and
comment.
Spotify and anywhere else.
That's our favorite podcast platforms. All right, we're going to get into it. This episode is it cheaper to
This
keep
is dedicated to all the women out there that say, was it cheaper or was it better to keep her?
Man,
so let's really talk about this one.
I mean, look, there's so many men that when they're talking to one another, they're literally like, dude, you're still married all this time. And then they say, well, it's cheaper to keep her. Because God forbid they say, I really love my wife and I really love having a family. It's almost like, yeah, no, it's just a cheaper to keep her.
I have no other choice but to keep her otherwise. I'm going to pay out, so.
Yeah,
no, I think with divorces and everything that's going on, I think if you had a prenuptial agreement, this wouldn't be an issue, in my opinion. It wouldn't be like, is it cheaper to keep her? But I can understand how sometimes you get married to people that, you know, maybe they're the underdogs, and initially when you get married for potential, and all of a sudden things change. And so now it is a factor of cheaper to keep her, because now it's 50-50. And being that it's California, where we're at currently, it's a no-fault state. So really, at the end of the, unless again, we've talked about this before, we are not giving any type of legal advice, nor are we attorneys, nor are we trying to front like we are. But if you have a prenuptial agreement, and in the prenuptial agreement, it says that he is not to be trifling and you catch him, then from my understanding, that prenuptial agreement could be thrown out the window. But if you don't have that in place, it could be cheaper to keep her. Yes or no?
I'm not going to comment on the legal stuff, but I will tell you that it depends. If you're in a marriage and the guy gives you this wonderful allowance and whatever, let's just say, you know, most women are not in a position where the husbands give them allowances. Plain and simple. We're talking about like 10% probably of the population out there that even deal with allowances. But when you really think about it, it's like, okay, if he was giving you $3,000 a month, I don't know, $4,000 a month, I don't know. What would it be if you got divorced? Would he have to pay $8? Because in California, if you have, you know, kids, you're going to get $500 per kid a month, depending on the lifestyle that was provided before. So that's essentially like the bare minimum, depending on his income and all this kind of stuff. So it's like, I don't know. I just think that when I hear a guy say, oh yeah, we've been married 30 years because it's cheaper to keep her, I revert back to this one woman that I worked with years ago who was Australian. Oh my gosh, I actually miss her. She was so great. But she had a daughter. She had a wonderful townhome by the beach. I mean, a beautiful Mercedes. She was a woman in her 40s. I was in my 20s at the time. Very elegant and very like Olivia Newton-John. And when I tell you that I said, oh, you know, your husband, he's so nice, because this man in a suit would come in once a week and bring her flowers and take her to lunch. It turned out that my dear, lovely boss at the time, she was actually the other woman. And that man was a very, very, very wealthy, predominant man in Orange County, California here, and had a whole wife that was married. He was married to her like 40 years or something like that.
Wow.
And they had a yacht together, and it was this whole thing. So she would tell me stories once she said she was the other woman. She was the other woman for like 15 years.
Oh.
And she
did
said
the wife know about her?
She never knew for sure, but no one ever came knocking on her condo or anything. And he would take this friend of mine on his yacht and spend the day with the daughter and everything. And so he knew which days, because the wife would use it. It was a whole thing, but the moral of the story is his reasoning was, and she told me, it's just cheaper for him to keep her. He's not going to go through all that. He'll lose too much money.
Oh my gosh. So this kind of triggered a thought. Obviously, here's my thought that was just triggered. I had a client of mine, and it was a fairly big design project that I had gone on. And she actually bought a $1 million home, or, you know, right now with the way the market is. If you're listening
You're like
to this in
Compton,
2021,
California, it's got $1 million
$1
houses.
million house, yeah.
Yeah.
So she basically had a house in in our area, and her husband had a house in somewhere in Orange County. Point is, they both, by the way, had their own properties and they had their own separate stuff. They were still legally married but separated in a way. So in my opinion, I thought, well, this is the way that the rich or the wealthy or whatever. It's just like, you do your thing, I do my thing. I have my own home in a different county, and you have your own home in your own county.
Oh.
Yeah, it was kind of odd, and that's just the way that they did it.
God, you know what? So I wonder, who I'm thinking about. I said in another episode about he's legally separated from his wife, but not legally married. And he's out here. She's in another state. And this is a Fortune 500 guy.
Which one?
I'm not going to say on camera. But I talked about it a couple episodes ago.
Well, I mean, I don't do good with what's
charades.
Like,
I don't know too many Fortune 500 guys, but this particular one, it's funny. You just reminded me. I thought, it just works for them. But I guess it could be a cheaper to keeper.
Okay, sorry, but it's a Fortune 500 guy that you know personally. Yes. It isn't like a Bill Gates that you don't want to name drop.
No, you already know who it is.
Okay.
So anyways, we don't need his name,
we always share stories without names.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people without no names, no what is it? No face, no case.
No face, no case.
No face, no case. So we're not talking about.
But I just now on camera had an aha moment because I literally have told that story a few times because he really explained it to me about the fact that he was married to his wife so many years, and they're actually legally still married, and he did a separation on paper, actually.
Okay.
And that he's off doing whatever because if something ever happens to him, and you're going to hear it in another episode, I tell the story, if something ever happens to him, he knows the money will go to the mother of his kids, and she'll disperse it to their children.
Right.
No matter what young thing he falls for.
And then the young thing will never make him marry her because he can't.
He can't.
Legally, he can't.
But I never associated it to a cheaper to keeper scenario, and so now it makes even more sense.
It makes more sense, yeah. Yes. And to me, it was a little bit mind-boggling because, if I marry someone, I'd want to live with them. I wouldn't want them to have their own place. So I was like, that's just weird. But then I thought, okay, well, I know that they're very well to do. So she has the ability to have that house, and they have a bunch of houses everywhere. And every once in a while, I think they see each other maybe twice a year, if that. And
so they're not even coming together for family events.
No, like not really. I mean,
so they're like divorced without the legality.
Of it, and each person has their own property, but they have a bunch of properties together, and they kind of share that in common.
Okay.
But for the most part, they have separate lives. But she doesn't date anyone from what I know, from what I've seen, because I spent a lot of time with her. Because I was, doing a project with her, and I never saw any other men or anything. I know that he might kind of eat outside the plate a little bit, is what I had heard, but I can't tell you that he has or hasn't. But point is, it is a cheaper to keeper situation for sure. Yeah, most definitely.
I mean, it's really an interesting thing because I've always just associated it with, I have a lot of money, and if we go through a divorce, I have to give up half. But really, it can play out in any scenario.
Yeah.
It can be any guy. You might be making $70,000 a year, and it's going to be cheaper to keep her because by the time you pay for the lawyers and have to pay the child support and do all that. And so, really, I think we as women understand that the guys, in most cases, suffer the financial brunt of it. It's a painful thing for men financially. And I think that we could easily admit that. And a lot of people want to make changes to the system regarding that because the women are saying, hey, we're equal. And there's this whole equality thing going on.
But you know what? But I will say another thing. If you do get married to someone and you have children, you had a family life, and yes, we're going back to the cheaper to keeper situation. I always say that 9 times out of 10, the responsibility isn't on the man as far as where the kids live. Even if they share maybe some type of custody, usually the mom receives most of the custody. So guess who has most of the responsibility? The mom does. That's dropping off, picking up, dance, this, that, or the other, and that takes time and money. And so So I'm not saying that there's a justification because of you stepping up and being more of the parent.
Yeah.
But in reality, that's what it boils down to. There are some rare cases, and we've talked about this.
I think that if you have a dad, I think it's rare to see a dad who steps in those roles. I think when men get married, they expect that that's what the wife's going to do. They're not necessarily running around doing the carpool for the kids and all that kind of stuff. So it's like even when you're married, you're the woman, you're the one doing it, and
Right.
to be able to say to your kids, "I want to continue that for you,"
Right.
You know, it makes
because
it really difficult.
if you don't do it, like say, you know, as a businesswoman or as a person that's working, it doesn't matter if you're a businesswoman. If you're a person that works and you have children, someone has to do that task if you can't do it. So that means that no one's going to just step up to the plate for free. Someone's got to get paid for that.
Yeah, it makes it hard.
So it makes it more difficult to have to be the one to then alter your schedule to say, hey, to your boss, I need to go take them to their ortho appointment and then take them to dance and then pick them up and then take them to finals and what have you. And so I think that that's kind of the burden that the women kind of just assume.
Yeah, because I remember like when I was married, that was the biggest thing for me was like, look, I'm over here, I'm literally working an hour and something away. I'm commuting on a train, a car, this or that, doing all that, still having to, by the way, make dinner, clean the house, and get my son to his football practice, which was every evening, every single day for hours. And then on the weekends, we had to travel for all the games. And I remember thinking to myself, he didn't go to all the practices and all that. I mean, but most of them. But let's just say if I would have gotten divorced at that time, I don't know that he would have stepped up and helped share that responsibility. It would have been completely on me.
Yeah.
And so there's women everywhere that are having to do this, and they're doing it successfully. And at the end of the day, it's like, when you look at the financial part of the lifestyle or whatever, it's we're coming into a time where women, because they're being so boisterous about the equality, that people are going, well, I saw, like for example, a divorce attorney, she says, ladies, if you're going to leave him, get ready to get a job. And I was like, whoa, like this whole like thing
so
about
true.
the moms getting the favor is fading away really quickly. So I think with the men, the cheaper to keeper thing we might be seeing a time where that might be coming to an end.
Quite possibly. I will share a story. There was a guy that had already paid all his child support and all his dues, and the way that he explained it, he said he paid her a little bit more than what the court ordered. And here was his take on it. He didn't want to change the quality of life for his kids.
Right,
that's one.
yeah.
And two, he said, I know that I didn't have to, it wasn't my burden to drop them off at school, to pick them up, to take them to dance, to buy them this, to make dinner, to do all the things that you have to do when you have a responsibility of children.
Yeah.
So for him, he felt like if he was the sole provider and the
yeah.
dad, he'd have to hire a nanny, a housekeeper, a cook.
Oh, I saw another guy talking about that to determine what the value of the woman being in the home is.
Right.
It's
and
like,
so,
whoa.
And so when he broke it down like that, see, I had never... It's always the man that's scorned that says, F her, she tried to take me for my money, this, that, or the other. But when this man, just a random guy, he wasn't anyone famous, he wasn't anyone that you would ever even know who I'm talking about. But my point is, the way he broke it down, he said, yeah, I'm going to pay my ex-wife because I don't have to do it. She's doing it. And she still had to work, by the way.
And I think that, if you guys are in a situation where you get divorced, maybe you negotiate something. Maybe you say, look, I'll take the child to sports, but you got to pay for the sports. I'll take the child to the ortho or whatever, but you got to pay for the braces.
Right.
And that's where all the 50-50 comes in. And you go, okay, I'll take him to go do XYZ, but you got to financially pay for that to even happen. And so it is a sort of like an even distribution and some give and take. But, I'm curious now that we're talking about it, because of the way things are shifting. When I heard that attorney say, she was a woman saying, women, if you're gonna divorce your man and you have kids and you've never worked, you better figure it out and get a job. I was a little bit taken back by it because there was no compassion. There was no. It made me feel like we were entering an era of like shit or get off the pot. Like, you are going to have to fend for yourself potentially. Mm-hmm. And it makes me wonder how
are we shifting? How we're shifting.
And is it a good thing or is it not a good thing?
Well, I will share, I know in the first season I did share this, and I think that messages come through all the time for all reasons, and I'll never forget this. And if you guys have just recently heard it, forgive me for being redundant, and if you never heard it, then great. So I was getting my car washed, and the lady sat next to me, and she had kind of like a more of a beat up car, in my opinion. She said that she used to have like nicer cars, and the reason why I say this is because of the way that she right away wanted to correct why she was driving that car.
Aww.
So she said, well, I went through a divorce, and she just looked like she was just like a beat haggard dog, by the way, just for the record. It was so sad. And she says, I was a fool. And she says, I'm sitting there, at the car wash, and it was the biggest epiphany for me. But anyway, she says, if I knew he was not fair in the marriage ever, and he was always doing his thing and cheating and this and beating and being abusive and all these things, she's like, why did I think he was going to be fair in the divorce?
Ooh, yeah.
And she said, that was my fault. And she then asked me, are you married? At the time I was married. And she's like, honey, all I can tell you is just really, I don't know what kind of dynamic you have, but whatever it is, protect yourself. She's like, because men will show you who they are along the way. Yes. And to me, that always stuck with me, and it resonated with
crap.
me. It really did, because, and I was maybe like married, I don't know, 6-7 years, so I still was like 3-4 years out before my divorce. But point is, when she said those words to me, it was like, I don't know if God sent her to me, but I definitely never forgot
God said,
her
this
words.
is your warnings, your emergency broadcast system.
Yes,
oh
emergency
my God.
break. Like, make sure it works.
You know what? There's a saying that says all is fair in love and war. And when I tell you that, absolutely. Like, you're going to see the best part of them when they're trying to court you and get you to become theirs. And then once you're theirs, you're going to see the red flags. Like, you're going to see the tendencies, maybe how he treats other people, maybe how he sits there and, like, does deals with people. Is he willing to, like, cut court? Whatever the situation is, you're going to be shown. And that could potentially be you. But we're talking specifically about, is it cheaper to keep her? If he's using that as an excuse, if you hear him say it, would you be offended? So let's just say you're at a nice dinner with a bunch of friends, and they go, man, dude, you guys are still together after all this time, and he says, well, it's cheaper to keep her.
That's offensive. That's beyond offensive, in my opinion. That means, like, I'm only with you because it makes sense for me. It makes financial sense.
Financial sense.
So obviously there's nothing there. And I will tell you, I don't know, the whole cheaper to keep her, if you do decide to take that path of being split or divorcing, again, not legal advice, try your best to try to come to some type of agreement, and do not
don't drag it out. Just get it together.
Just get it together and do it.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes. There is no point in dragging.
No.
All parties.
Only
in this
the lawyers.
Mess,
the lawyers win.
Only the lawyers win. I promise you that. And whatever they always say, when you're negotiating something, both parties have to leave something on the table in order for it to feel fair.
Compromise.
So just remember that.
And think about, that's a good point, because you know what? If you guys have not figured out the compromise situation in the marriage, it is going to be a disaster
in the rocky road
divorce.
For you guys. And I don't mean the ice cream, by the way. I'm talking rocky road. It's gonna get messy.
Oh my God. I mean, I think, listen, when you guys are in a very harmonious place, there are things called post-nups. She's like, good luck. There are things called post-nups if you have a conversation to be able to say,
but if you never had this is where I have a little bit of an issue. Now, I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying, for me, I can tell you this, and I mean, I may change my mind in a week, but if you're married and you didn't get a prenup, it would be silly to get a post-nup, because now you're back to the cheaper to keep her. Then it's like, okay, you're not happy with me, then what are we doing? So the post-nup, essentially, to me, is what that is. Yeah. Is like saying, I'm not really happy with you.
I just think any agreement, it also benefits, every agreement's going to benefit you if you want it to. And I think that I've met plenty of women who just signed the prenup. They literally just signed it. And 20 years deep, they're like, I'm still here because I'm on an ironclad prenup. Like, I get nothing if this ends. Like, this is like shop talk with girls. And it's like, did you make edits? Now, again, I'm not a lawyer or whatever, but I had met a family law or a lawyer who said, if you didn't make any edits or changes, who's to say you weren't under duress or whatever? So you got to do your own investigating. But what I'm trying to say is, at the end of the day, there's also on the flip side, women who are like, yeah, I can't leave because financially I don't want to give this up. So I feel like it's a double-edged sword.
I mean, it depends on how you're being treated
Yeah.
and what you're willing to give up. And what I mean by that is, okay, so the lifestyle's great, but maybe you're being mistreated and you're being belittled.
Yeah.
I think that there's so many ways to make money if it's all about the money.
Yeah.
And even if you don't live in a grandiose house, like, your dignity is worth more than anything that anyone
Yeah.
could ever provide for you, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So, but at the end of the day, that's easy for me to say because I would be on the outside looking in, though I have been through my own set of circumstances. But that was a choice that I made just because I do understand that life is really short, and you know what, I don't get a second try at this, and I'm not gonna, have my hands full with someone that's just wasting my
No.
time. And even though he was my husband, I had to make that decision to say, okay,
Especially
I'm out.
in those situations, you're the one actually in the marriage. You actually are like
You're the
honoring-
married one.
You're the married one, and the other
And
one
the other
is
person
like
doesn't care.
is-
They're not. They're not married. They're like,
Yeah.
I'm single. I'm running amok.
Yeah, so you'll
I might
stay.
as well run amok myself, and then
And then
go
that's
do
a
my
whole other
thing.
thing.
And that's a whole other podcast. But
Oh,
but at the end of
Yeah.
the day, I would be offended if someone said that.
Yeah.
It's cheaper to keep her, so that's why she's here.
Oh,
But that's just me though. So you may not be, and it might be just some funny.
it depends on the context,
It
but
depends. Yeah, it really
but it's
does.
not it's not a
It's not what you
flattering
say,
statement.
it's
It's
how
how
you
you
say
say
it.
it. Listen, we wanted to have this conversation. We were very curious about it, the whole cheaper to keeper thing. We live in Southern California, so
We
we
see it
hear
all day
it.
long, twice on Sundays.
Yes.
And we get a lot of DMs and a lot of calls,
Yes,
and
yes,
we
yes.
are not attorneys.
We are
and
not
we're
attorneys.
just here.
Yeah.
We're just here giving our 2 cents.
Yeah.
1 penny, 1 penny.
One
One
and
cent,
one.
1 cent.
One and one makes a
Anyway,
million.
so Cheerios,
All
and
right.
don't forget that
You deserve fresh lettuce. Cheers.
Cheers.